Hi, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the very first installment of How to Love in a Hard World. This is a new IG live series that I've been wanting to do for a while. I love talking to other healers and other creators, and I really need it, honestly. It's rough out here, and we need to be helping each other out. We need to be getting other resources, other methods of healing, other strategies, other perspectives of seeing the world. We need to really be coming together. And I'm just so excited to have Juju in. And I'm in just a second. So happy. Yes. Hello.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear
Okay,
you
cool.
well.
Okay, cool. Hi.
Hi. It's so great to meet you.
Yes, it's great to meet you. I do meet you too. How you
I know.
feeling?
I was just gonna ask you the same thing. I'm
Oh,
okay.
hmm
I'm hanging in there. I
yeah,
mean, it's rough out here, but I feel better today than I have for the past few days.
yeah.
How are you doing?
The same. I feel better today than I have the past few days. The past few days have been very rough.
Yeah.
Just really being like unsure of a lot. And sometimes super doubtful. So like I've kind of been dealing with like feeling doubtful. But
Yeah.
today I feel a little hope. I did my little things. So I'm feeling better
Mm-hmm.
today and happy to be talking to you.
I know. I'm so happy to be talking to you. I was listening to your podcast and
Mhm.
I'm just so inspired by you. You're so multi-talented. You're an
Oh,
amazing
thank you.
singer.
Thank you.
You're an amazing healer. You've built such
Thank
a
you.
beautiful community. And for people who are my followers who are here, you have an amazing podcast called A Little Juju. Do you want to talk about it a little bit or like a little bit about your
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, so like you're saying, I have a podcast. It's called A Little Juju Podcast, where I talk about ancient spiritual systems, particularly African and of the African diaspora. So I also talk about ancestors a lot because they're really important to my practice and what it means to connect to our ancestors. That it kind of helps us through our grief, and just recognizing that like we have spirits, we have spirit teams, we have allies that exist beyond the physical form but also in the spiritual form, and how to just connect with those allies. So that's a lot of my work. I also do Reiki. I do sing, like you said. I do readings as well. So a little bit of everything, but yeah, that's kind of what my work is centered in healing and liberation.
Yeah, the ancestral stuff is so important. And I think that for so many of us, like we feel so disconnected in a lot of ways to that, especially if you're, from indigenous groups or from Black ancestry, and that history has sort of just been kind of taken away from you or wiped from the history books and really
Yeah.
claiming that. For me, it's been really interesting because I'm writing a book right now and I'm having
Okay.
to kind of dig into a lot of my ancestry, and I'm Samoan and Mexican, and I grew up in Texas, so I grew up pretty separated from Samoan life and just understanding the culture like before the missionaries came and before
Mm-hmm.
colonialization, and just connecting to that part of myself has been so awesome, but it also can be a little bit painful to see so much that's been kind of like taken away, and then also for me at the same time understanding that within me is also like the colonizer part.
Right.
It's also in me too, and really
Ooh.
like having to reconcile with that, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because I think sometimes when
Mhm.
people talk about ancestry, a lot of non-Black people talk about ancestry, it's like we tend to forget about that part, kind of just leave that part out of that,
Mhm.
that also being part of our lineage. And I think that it's really an important part to acknowledge that both of those systems are living within your body.
Yes.
Um,
Whew.
yeah, so
Yeah,
I just
that's
got like
deep.
super.
No, that's some deep. It's some deep and some real stuff that you're saying, and I think it's for really everybody, and not.
Mhm.
I love ancestral work, but I never want to romanticize
Mm.
fully the process of engaging with our ancestors, because our ancestors were loving and revolutionary, but some were also abusive, and some of them contributed to some of the pain that we feel today, or some of the things that we feel in our families that we don't get, or what people will call generational curses, right? Like you said, all of that exists within our human experience, and pulling that apart is a lot. We're all trying to pull it apart at the same time. So it's a powerful work, but it's definitely not for the faint of heart.
It's not. What does your spiritual practice look like? Like
Yeah.
what's your routine?
So I practice multiple religions. One
Mhm.
being Hoodoo, which is like a Black American spiritual tradition, way of living in life that was born in the American South, really because of enslavement. So it was the ideas that we carried from the continent over into this new land, and like, okay, so how are we going to survive? What spirits do we need to connect to? So that's Hoodoo, and so I do practice that, and I grew up kind of Hoodoo, but that my people wouldn't call it that, but we were doing
Mhm.
things, and I was like, why do we do that? This is what we do.
Mhm.
And then I also practice a spiritual tradition religion called Ifa. So it's the veneration really of nature-based deities, and spirits called Orisha, and the divine creator. And so that's really about honoring who I am, honoring the land, and honoring each individual person's destiny, and how we can
Mhm.
blend our destinies together. My destiny ain't yours, yours ain't mine, but we can still coexist with each other, and support each other as we, figure out our destiny. So yeah, it looks so many different ways. Um, it's grounded in a lot of things, but at the forefront of both of them is really my ancestors, and the ancestors who I believe sort of give us insights and guide us in this human journey. And
Mhm.
my connection with them makes this life more enjoyable, because if anyone gets it, they get it because they've been here. So they kind of get to see the other realm because they're there, but they're also like, oh girl, we know, we know what's going
Mhm.
on because we've been there. So yeah, that's a
Mhm.
little bit of what I do in my practice.
Yeah, I think that how I like to describe like the higher self concept, or how I think about it, is
Hmm.
the part of us who we are beyond these human forms. You could call
Yes.
it spirit,
Hmm.
you could call it God, goddess within,
Hmm.
beyond the story of this reality. And
Right.
especially when things are really hard here, how important it is to realize that, yes, like this is a reality that's happening here. And yes, we are here for a purpose. We are here to transform this
Hmm.
place. And that's why we've been brought here. And that's our purpose. But to also know that this actually isn't really your true home,
Mm.
in a very larger sense, in a very deeper way. Like you have come from somewhere that where you will return,
Yes.
and you are here to share and awaken and transform this place to the consciousness of love.
Mm.
And this is your go around.
Yep.
but ultimately there's something within you that is beyond this place. And when I'm struggling in my faith, and when I'm struggling with not having control over other people's choices, because there is only so much that we can do. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, we you know we can make other people choose differently, because we
Right.
can't. Because I definitely believe in free will. I mean, I definitely believe that we have the choice if we're
Right.
going to choose from love or not. And we're
Right.
constantly making that choice
Yep.
every single moment of our life.
Hmm.
We're either in alignment with the truth of love, or we're choosing something different. And
Hmm.
um, it's hard to always be conscious of that, obviously, but
Yeah.
when I it's super hard, but that's the place that always kind of gives me peace, you know, because I think that on a very deep level, what all of this stuff really triggers in us and why the world is such a hard place, which is kind of like the topic that we're coming into, is because on a very deep level, we are afraid of death, of, you know, of pain.
Yeah.
And when I find that peace is when I connect to that part of me that I know is beyond that.
Mm-hmm. That's so powerful, because I think as I'm, you know, studying more indigenous religions and ancient traditions, you know, the biggest thing is like death is a celebrated aspect of our lives. Like death is a part of life. This is all a cycle. And I think because of colonialism, because of all the, you know, the fuckery, you know, we've gotten to this place where we, because we loathe death, we're afraid of death, we don't allow ourselves to grieve through death. There are no real solid rituals. I mean, of course, funerals, but like there really used to be processes so people could like actually handle and deal with death. It was very communal. It was celebration and tears. Like it really encompassed everything, and we've lost a lot of that. And on top of that, especially as Black folks and people of color, the ways that we die has become even more traumatic, I think, than it used to be. Like we die in hospital because we don't have enough. We die, we're not safe here. And so our relationship to death is, it's constantly shifting. So yeah, it is good to ground and remind, like, okay, this is my experience today. But one day I won't have this experience, but I'll be having another experience, potentially on a different realm, or in some traditions, maybe back in this one. In mine, we come back through our ancestors sometimes. And I'm living the life of like my great great grandmother right now. So it's like, it's that does help. I mean, sometimes I know people are like, that's a little too woo woo, like we're dealing with the now. And that's valid and that's real. But like not putting too much, and I can't put too much energy in the things that happen to me as a human, because there's so much more to experience. In the Orisha tradition, we say that heaven is home and earth is the marketplace. So we know that we're going to go back home to heaven and have our experience in the spiritual realm. Now we're transacting, we're teaching each other, like you said, we're learning. This is the marketplace. I'm buying things, I'm doing things, like I'm outside. But this ain't home. I'm just at the market. I'm going to go home after I've gotten the things that I've needed from the market to then share like in the spiritual realm, in the heavens, and be amongst my friends and the family, etc. So it does help.
Yeah, it does. I sometimes read this book called A Course in Miracles, which is kind of, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's kind of like a psychological understanding of like Christian mysticism. It's not like super religious based, but it does use Christian terminology. And it talks a lot about how heaven is just a shift in your consciousness and your awareness. And how, you know, you can access that at any point in time, you know, and it reminds me of how, you know, those times when you just kind of plug in and maybe it's meditating or praying or whatever ritual you're doing, and something shifts within you and you kind of like look around and you all of a sudden see like the truth, you know, you see, I would call it like the awareness of love, and where you see, and that's also like what nature's so good at showing you too, like the interconnection of everything and all of us together, and how we are actually all one consciousness. And the fact that, you know, how we see our separation, we see separate bodies, but if you know, look into like quantum physics and stuff like that, there actually is no separation. We're actually just kind of like atoms floating around into this ether, you know. And it's really like our brains that see this separation, but actually we are joined and one with everything. And sometimes when you do that work, when you go into that deep spiritual place, you have this other vision, this other sense. And I feel, and that's what I describe as like aligning with your higher self. Like you see this truth that is beyond like language or, you know, that we can understand or put words to really. And it really is just like a shift that you feel inside your consciousness.
Right.
But we do need practices to do that work, right? We do need, we need
do.
effort.
Yes. It's work. It
Yeah.
is work. I was just thinking as you were talking, like, well, how do you carry that higher self-consciousness with you in the mundane? Or like, how do you stay sort of centered in that, you know, I'm more than maybe this experience that I'm having or whatever difficulty that I'm experiencing? Like, what does that look like for you to like, or how do you, I don't know if you're supposed to ask me questions, but I just want to ask you, like,
No,
how
you
do you
can
kind
ask
of
me
bring,
whatever.
okay, how do you bring that with you regularly?
Well, I think you will, like, for me, the mornings are really, really important.
Yes, same.
I do like, I do, I do meditate, and I also journal, and I also will try to read whatever spiritual book, and, you know, try to educate myself spiritually in a different way in the morning and kind of set a tone from that place. But another, you know, doing just also having turned it into my career, which was totally accidental. You know, I just started kind of sharing those shifts. Like I was having those shifts, you know, when the love comes in and you see the truth. And we have those moments all of the time, you know, if we're in a conflict with our partner or mom or something, and we kind of see love all of a sudden, we're like, oh, okay, like actually there's more to this than my anger or whatever. So I was in my own, like, struggling with my own healing and having all of these little shifts, like in my own awareness and stuff. And I just started sharing them on Instagram. And so that, you know, sharing became part of my practice, you know, having to show up for other people, and doing my podcast. And I'm sure you can relate, and being in that position of, you know, if you're going to be that, you know, doing that work, you kind of have to like check yourself.
Yes.
Before you're putting up,
Accountability.
you know, yeah, it's a responsibility. And so that's how I feel like this work kind of keeps me in check. Granted, like I'm not always there by any means, and I go through seasons and cycles of like sadness and darkness. But then when I'm in those places, I kind of have also like I can also shift to be like, this is okay. And I think that that's really helped me, because so much of like the healing rhetoric out there is like, oh, you need to be like grateful right now or something. But for me, where the healing really comes in is being like, you know what, like the way that you feel right now is okay. Like for me, the healing is stopping the shame at every step of the journey.
That's good.
So
Yes, stopping the shame. Yeah, because we're not always going to be, I don't know, I'm not always grateful in the
I
moment. Like,
know.
that shouldn't have happened. No, that's not okay. No, I feel bad. No, I'm angry. I love what you
Yeah.
said. That's something that I'm about to incorporate, like stopping the shame from shaming my own feelings or
Yeah.
shaming my own very natural human emotions. And I think sometimes, especially as someone who shares my work and the things that I'm learning, feeling like I always have to have it together to show up as a good healer, because I'm talking to people about this and I'm telling them, you know, oh, I'm having all these blah, blah, blah. And then meanwhile, like I've been sad for a week, like, and I haven't talked about anything, and I feel really disconnected from the work. I feel disconnected from myself. But there really is no shame in that, because that's a natural, people go through that regardless of if you're in the public eye or your home. Like we all can just honor where we are at a time, especially now. It's a hard
Yeah.
It's
And
hard.
and also how helpful that is for people to hear.
Yeah.
You know, the people that are looking to you for guidance, hearing that you say like, you know what, I can't get it together this week. I mean, that is that means so much. And when I think about like my mentors or the teachers that I've looked up to, like when they kind of show that authenticity, that honesty, like that really, really touches me.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important that we stop, like, you know, part of the reason why I really wanted to also start sharing my stuff was because what I saw out there felt so clean and so like pretty.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like it's all just like this perfect Instagram photo of like
Yeah.
a white room with like one green plant and then like a like minimal, like I don't know,
Yep.
like the aesthetic was just, and I'm just like
Yes.
know,
Yes.
you know, like
Yes.
it's messy and it's grimy and it's like
Mhm.
slimy
Mhm.
and it's
Mhm.
and it is a painful process to be in this world and to also be um conscious of your own awakening journey. Like we're all
Yeah.
in this awakening journey together.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
some people are really are I feel like humanity is at this precipice, you know, where our next evolutionary shift is either to awaken to our oneness or not, you know, because
Or
that's the
not.
only
Right.
survival of the species actually.
Right. 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 And I feel like that's been so evident within the past few years, really. Probably like toward the beginning of COVID, I feel like a lot of people have been having these self conversations that maybe they weren't having, just
Mm-hmm.
about like our own existence, humanity, you know, experiencing so much death around us. When before that, we were all seemingly just chilling, and then it was just like, boop. But everyone really wasn't chilling before then. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I feel so it's an opportunity for us to find connection with each other. But like you said, either we do that or we don't. Like, and then
Mm-hmm.
we'll have whatever experience is the effect of those choices. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a lot to witness. It's a lot to witness.
Yeah, and we have to like support each other more. One of the
Yeah.
things that I thought was kind of optimistic thing about the
Mhm.
world was I was listening to this The Daily, which is like a New York
Mhm.
Times daily
Mhm.
podcast. And they were talking about like chronic pain, and they were
Mhm.
talking about these like VR healing programs
Mhm.
where people they were doing all these tests with people who they were using VR to like for people who have chronic pain for healing,
Mhm.
self-healing, and it would be like these like beautiful nature scenes, and then like when your breathing changed, like flowers would grow out of the
Mhm.
plants and all of this stuff, and
Mhm.
it was kind of inducing a psychedelic experience without actually
Mhm.
having without taking psychedelics,
Right.
and it was like allowing people to like have that vision, that healing vision, and to
Mhm.
kind of like see the source of the
Yeah.
pain, you know, when you have those like healing
Mhm.
profound experiences.
Yeah.
And this was all through like VR, and it
Mm.
kind of made me like excited to think about how, you know, obviously technology can elicit some fear when you think about it, but it also makes me excited to think about how our advances in technology can also facilitate these like
Mhm.
beautiful healing things too. Like it can be
Right.
used for so much good at the
Right.
same time. And
Yeah. Mhm.
so the future looked kind of cool when I was
Mhm. No, that is really cool. And I feel like also when we think about, you know, those kinds of technological advancements, there's also this awakening to our ancestral technology that I think people are tapping into as well. So we have a
right.
lot of different technological advances happening, some even of the spirit for people being like, oh, I feel like there's more out there for me. Let me tap into this moreness and see what it is. Let me see someone who maybe could give me a reading or someone who makes me feel more
Right.
connected. And I think that's an interesting technology moment too,
Mm.
because these are old technologies that are kind of coming to the forefront that we're able to share. We're able to talk right now on this about these
Yes.
things. So there's there's a lot of interesting and a lot of light that's kind of being brought about right now in the realm of technology when we really think about the spectrum of what technology is, like past and future technologies coming together to do some intense healing. So I love it.
Yeah, and also just this idea of how like, the like say VR, say like, talking on Instagram or whatever, or even, using the internet, like in so many ways is showing us, like it's giving us that awareness
Mm-hmm.
as a collective,
Yeah.
like it's as dark as the internet can be, it's also showing us things that have always been there.
Yeah.
It can feel like right now things are so much worse than they ever were because it's all being,
We see it.
yeah, we
Right.
see it, whereas before we didn't see it. It was
Right.
hidden, it was in the shadows, or was happening over there, and we didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
or we could ignore it, if we
Yeah.
wanted to, and now we can't.
Right. Now we can't.
And so it, even as hard as things are right now, I do see how I can see like the light at the end of the tunnel. Like I can see how right now we're in this collective healing, and it's messy, and it's
See.
painful just for all of this stuff to
Mm-hmm.
be witnessed. It's so hard, but at the same time we can't, there's no way out but through, like the saying
Yeah.
goes.
No way out but through. It's such an interesting time. I saw something earlier and it was like Earth is in its flop era, and I laughed and I posted it. But I'm like, you know what? Earth has probably been in its flop era for a minute. We just are seeing the flop. It's just it's a public flop. It's on
We're seeing,
stage. That's
yeah,
it.
and also people have been saying it's the apocalypse, like for every
For
single generation, like for
thousands of years.
yes, they're like it's the end of days. It's like always been the end of days.
Every day.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe we just have to just try our hardest to just be love and just enjoy it as much
Yeah.
as we can.
As much as we can. And then when we don't, that's okay.
That's
Because
okay.
that's okay.
Well, I'd love for you to, before we wrap up, tell everybody
Yeah.
where they can find of your stuff. I'm sure lots of your audience is here too, but it would be great for people
Yeah.
to know.
You can find me right here on Instagram at Itsjujubae. You can give me a follow. I'm also, you can listen to my podcast, A Little Juju Podcast. It's streaming pretty much everywhere you can find a podcast. You can hit me up on my website, jujubae.com, where you can book a reading,
Oh, that's
Reiki
awesome.
session, or if you just want to reach out, collaborate, you can get my contact information there. So those are my places, my main things. Well, thank you so much for this.
Thank, thank you so much. It was such a awesome conversation. It made me feel so good, and I really needed that today. So thank you so much.
Me too. So thank you. Thank you.
And bless you, and let's keep in touch.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.